Now time to work on the tongue controllers. We did the tongue specifically so I could show off different cycle branch morph ways of using our local control hierarchies. So from here, let's go into setup and clean up the scene just a little bit. Have everything put together here. We can collapse PM_head. Let's mark the skeleton invisible so we can avoid having to look around that and focus on just the tongue. So let's mark everything except for the tongue invisible, so all we have is the tongue. Now one thing we have to check here is we have to check on this deform. Now we have the use PreDeform Points, but we only checked that for the head. We didn't check that for any of the other objects that are added to the scene. So we need to go to the tongue and make sure the tongue also uses PreDeform Points, so that as it's deforming this object, it checks to see if anything else has deformed it first. Now we can continue working. So let's go to the tongue. This tongue is going to get the BoneDeform put on because it is possible to layer BoneDeforms together. So let's add the BoneDeform to that. We'll call this one Dragon_tongue. And if you want to, the deform underneath too. Dragon tongue deform. So from here, let's add a bone to the scene. We don't need to create any root bones to this, just move this bone up to the base of the tongue. Position it however you want. We're going to use 3 joints. You can make it however many joints you want, but this is the proof of concept here. So we've adjusted this tongue so that it looks good for what we're doing. So when we head into animate now, we can pick up this tongue and rotate it anywhere we want. Now it looks great. Everything is just how we had expected it. So how do we make this work inside the character? So turn on the head again. We're just going to make the head smoothen edges, and let's turn the body back on. Let's change these to edges, and of course the nulls get highlighted again, so I need to pick the nulls and hide the nulls. Set those to none. Set the lower jaw too. Okay, from here, let's open the jaw. Open the upper jaw, whatever you want to do. Check this out, and it looks like we have some execution orders messed up. So into setup, and we have the tongue happening after the deform, and the deform always has to execute last so it knows where the tongue is supposed to go. So back in animate, and now the tongue is moving correctly where we want it to be. And the tongue is attached to the mouth, and when we grab this, the tongue moves, but we have the same issue we had with the lips. So we need to create another control hierarchy that sits inside this that controls the tongue. So next step, go back into setup. We have this tongue bone that's going on here. How about we duplicate this hierarchy here with the multiply key. So we have bone 4, 5, and 6. And let's just call this one just Dragon Control Tongue 1, Control Tongue 2, Control Tongue 3. However you want to rename this one. And make sure to set these bones, the slip to 1, so they don't have any influence on the mesh. They are part of the tongue BoneDeform, but we're going to parent this inside the lower jaw. So lower jaw 1, drag the control tongue into lower jaw 1. So now it's part of the hierarchy. Of course, it's sitting out in the middle of nowhere, this extra part, so we need to set that back. So just zero that out, and if you want, change the rotates, but we'll just make sure that this is set in the same position as the other tongue. Now here's the bone 1, so you need to drag this control tongue over here and make sure that it lines up. So rotate pitch up. Okay, so we're close. So now we have a control hierarchy, and we have the hierarchy that actually moves the mesh around. So into command, we have our control hierarchy sitting inside the thing. It's not doing anything until we drop another cycle branch morph in. So create a new variable, drag this to the bottom of the list, Dragon_tongue attach. Go to the expressions, let's pick the cycle branch morph again in the C's, morph add frame, and this is going to be the morph target. So it goes in the second field. Let's pick the tongue attach, put that in the first field, and make sure to set this one to just rotate. We don't need to translate it around. We can just say rotate, and now it's the frame it's going to check, and it's going to blend 100%. So right click, and now the tongue is working and lining up with our control tongue. So as we move the control tongue around, the entire hierarchy is getting moved into the control tongue. Now it doesn't quite line up because the control tongue is moving with a distorted tongue that is being distorted by both the lower jaw and the tongue. But you can see that we are getting close to the same distortions. So you will be off a bit, but if it returns back to normal, it will look lined up. So into setup, make sure we're set to all items on the dope frame to return this back to its setup position, create a new keyframe. So we're back into animate. So we can hide this tongue, set it to nothing. It's nested underneath the tongue geometry. So we still have just the control objects in here doing whatever we need them to do. Let's go to File and save this scene as LocalControllersCH9.